Welcome to the Decentralized Opportunity Podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Lytle, here with your other host,
Wyatt, Carson. Tanner, this is a special episode.
Yeah, 1 year, I guess 52 episodes, so 52 weeks posted.
That's right. Congratulations, Tanner. It's been interesting, hasn't it?
It's been quite the journey, and man, I feel like we've really progressed over the last year in terms of quality of content, but also in our lives, right?
I wholeheartedly agree, which is what we wanted to talk about today on our 1 year anniversary episode. Tanner and I, we chatted about a week or two ago and said, what would be great is if we collected individually kind of lessons learned, things that we have taken away from this experience of starting a podcast, of interviewing everyone from bakery owners to millionaire angel investors, right? Our repertoire of interviews has been impressive, and those are super fun. And I feel like every single person we talk to, we learn something.
Yeah, we have been just diving into so many different topics, and the concepts kind of just keep sticking with us. So we keep diving into deeper and deeper. So I thought this would be such a neat opportunity for us to go over perhaps the top 3 a piece of what concepts over the last year have really resonated and took the most hold for us, and then we can share that with the audience.
Love it. So I'm gonna go first because what you said was my very first point. And my first point is everyone is on a journey, but literally no one is on the exact same journey. And what I mean by that is not only through our interviews, learning about their individual entrepreneurship journeys, but our own as well. And, Tanner alluded to it really well, saying that we've been on a crazy journey, just Tanner and I as a group, let alone individually, going back and looking at our very first episode, seeing where we're at. Our goals and motives have changed a lot, I think is fair to say. For example, and I'll only speak for myself here, Tanner. For example, when we started this podcast, I was gung-ho, let's build a product, let's get investing, let's go own a skyscraper in Oregon, Seattle, whatever, took a lot of kind of, I guess the word I could use is soul searching to realize maybe that's not the path that I wanted particularly for myself. I thought I did, and it was very exciting. But, being a CEO or COO of a major tech corporation, I don't think that meshes with my view of life and what makes me happy. And while I absolutely have every intention to continue to build a product and do something that has my name on it and something that I'm very proud of, it's also not necessary to just dive headfirst, ignoring other, responsibilities or trying to shift them to focus on this. For me, it was much more of a discovery over the last year of what makes Wyatt happy, what would I enjoy, and what do I think is best for me and my family, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about it probably a couple times now, but you cannot predict the future. Even if you just try to do the thought experiment of like, what are you going to have for lunch today? And what is that experience fully going to be like? And if you try to plan that out, and then when you actually go do the thing and think about everything that did happen, it'll be somewhat the same, but you'd be surprised at how different it would be and how many days everything just gets completely upended. So how are you truly going to plan your own future and your own career and how these things are actually going to play out? It's all about just living in the moment, so much of it, and figuring out where you are and what the best path is forward. And there's a concept of from the book The Gap and the Gain, and I always try to do that for me too to keep things in perspective, which is like you don't measure yourself from where you want to be, but from where you were yesterday and how far you've come from those previous things. And so if you're always just incrementally growing, you're going to be much more motivated and in the end move much further than if you aspire to be something way further out there and then demotivated if you're not actually close to that target.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also on the subject of podcast, I had someone ask me the other week, uh, what do we want to get out of the podcast? And it was so hard to answer because I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
That is something that's been morphing too over the year, hasn't it?
yeah, and I don't know. I make the joke that there was a meme tweet. It's like, why do guys start podcasts instead of going to therapy? But there's something true about that. So in some ways, it's a bit cathartic, but also it really helps us learn and understand these things and better ourselves. So my recommendation to everybody is you should probably start a podcast. It doesn't matter if no one listens to it.
100%. That and that's one thing that's really in terms of morphing. We started out with what are XYZ steps that we can do to make this the best podcast, and we want to rank number one in this category, and we want 1 million subscribers, and it's morphed to, you know what, if we just continue doing stuff that we find valuable, we think other people might find valuable, something's going to click, something's going to latch on. And we have seen that success in the podcast. Our viewership has grown, our comments, just comments from like going to like Walmart or something like that. We are starting to click with those who are looking for the message we have. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's going to make us better in the podcasting world, is being true to ourselves and not trying to be, a Joe Rogan or, one of the various murder podcasts my wife listens to where you try to cater to a very wide audience. I don't think we're capable of that. And I don't think you and I would get the same enjoyment.
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. So my first one kind of dovetails right into what you were just talking about in your first one, which is you're not falling behind. And so I want to preface this with a little story because this has been a problem all my life. Where just because other people have started something before you doesn't mean you're so far behind that it's not worth starting yourself. And I remember when I was a kid, I always wanted to learn how to swim, but my mom signed me up for lessons and all this other stuff. And I walked to the pool and I was unsure. And there's all these kids who were taking swimming lessons that seemed to know how to swim. And it was very demoralizing for me. And so I immediately got shy, went home, and then I still can't swim worth a darn to this day. But there's all these different things. And I think back to when I was in school, I always loved basketball, but I always felt like, I couldn't do it because there was all these kids that did camps. Or same goes with any athletics or a lot of different groups and projects. It's like, these people have been doing this for years. If I start, I'm just going to be so far behind that I'll never be able to catch up. And it isn't until pretty recently that I've been just disregarding that feeling. And the whole tattoo part, which we've talked about, is very much that, because here's a guy who's almost 38, who has never tattooed before. While I've done lots of art, I've never done this. And it's very intimidating to go into something and trying to learn it from zero, in a sense. And then you're going to have to pay your dues in many ways because you're going to be a first-year person making first-year mistakes. Then you'll be a second-year person making second-year mistakes. But, I didn't start it when I was 20. I didn't start it when I was 30. But the next best thing is today.
No, absolutely. Well said. I think, and you and I have had side conversations with listeners of this podcast about this exact same topic of, I don't remember where the shift happened. I wish I could figure out the exact inflection point of my life, but it has been in the last year of this podcast where exactly what you said, it kind of clicked with me is, and this is the advice I gave to other people, is if you have an idea and you find out that someone else is already doing your idea, that's not a negative at all. In fact, they did half of your market research for you because you know there's a market. Now, don't get me wrong. You can't just say, I'm going to make the next, search engine and fight Google. That's an uphill battle. But having people already in the space that you want to touch yourself, it proves that there's a market. It proves that there's money to be made and that there's an audience for whatever you want. And now you get to take that part of the kind of pre-business mindset and put it off to the side because, someone else did it. And now you just focus on, okay, what can I do better? How can I better serve people? And what features or pathways do I want to explore that are going to set me apart?
Yeah. And it's never too late to pivot, because you might be doing something in your career for a decade and you feel like, well, I don't enjoy it anymore, but it's what I do. It's what I know is what the only thing people will hire me for. And so you just kind of stick with it and kind of this path of, uneasiness, unhappiness, a bit unfulfilled. And there's many more things that you may have found or may find more entertaining or more fulfilling or have more passion towards. And it's the moment now. It's again, it's you're not too late just because other people are doing it. And I love that's what you're saying. Like, learn from their lessons. Learn, take the initiative upon yourself. And as we were talking about in the first part, it's don't measure yourself against those people, because there's always going to be someone further ahead of you, because there's always going to be people who've lived before you. But the best time to plant a tree is today, and the best time to make the effort is today. So just work your own journey.
Beautiful. And, for us improving this and just going back and forth with our individual lists, we're doing a very good way of tearing up the next individual. Because I'm going to combine my second and third points. And don't worry, I have more.
Yeah, and we don't know each other's points either. We're coming in blind to this. So
yes, this is fun.
The fact that it's kind of smoothly happening is pretty great.
It's almost like we've been doing this for a year. So my next point is, you do not have to wake up at 3 a.m., take an ice bath, and run a 15K in order to be successful. Listen, there are umpteen million books out there and podcasts and YouTube channels showing people the new productivity hack or the new way to boost XYZ, do this better. And those are great, but I think where a lot of people get caught up in them is they don't realize that those are extremes. The two extremes of productivity is I'm David Goggins, and the other end of the spectrum is I don't do anything. That's it. You have to find your balance in the middle of what that looks for you. Don't get me wrong. Things like journaling, reading more, all of these are proven to help in some way, shape, or form, but they're not for everyone. And finding your routine, finding what inspires you, finding what gets you up in the morning and excited, is really where the value's at. You don't have to take everything to the extreme to be successful. In fact, we had an entire episode called Hustle Culture is Toxic, one of my favorite episodes. And I'm of the belief that hustle culture has done more for ruining self-esteem and future ventures than it has done making young millionaires like you see on TikTok, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're going to tell a good story, you need a lot of contrast and you need a lot of tension. So to get people to get a message out and a point across, they put those big extremes, the David Goggins versus the worthless guy who doesn't get off his couch. And I guess in his life, it was the same person. It's just a different stage in his life, which is why it's such an entertaining story. But that's a story in many sense. And there's a lot of different reality moments in there that isn't captured within that. And that's probably where you are right now. So that's where it isn't relatable unless you're at your rock bottom, where you would be motivated to make a change, or unless you are such an elite spot that you can completely compare yourself and it's relatable. You are a bit on your own island to get those messages. But again, it's taking a specific point from somebody and trying to apply it in your life rather than completely transforming your own life to mimic, other people. And that's kind of the problem you're saying with hustle culture, where it's all these people following the same formula. And, if you just, garage sale and sell it on eBay, you can make an extra $2,000 a week and you can do this. And it's just like, well, if everyone did that, then there would be no products on Google and no products in garage sales, and everything would be on Google and no one would be buying it. It's all these get rich quick or do this easy. And it's very rare that success comes easy. It might look easy from an outsider, and Malcolm Gladwell has some really good books on outliers, which talks about the whole 10,000 hours and all the things you think there's a overnight success, but in reality, they've been grinding for decades or for many years or tens of thousands of hours to get to where they were. And yeah, you don't have to follow the formula exactly. You can be on your own.
Well said.
So my next one, this was a pretty early revelation for me, and I've been trying over the last year to really apply the understanding with it, which is goes through energy. So everything with us is applicable to the laws of thermodynamics, which energy comes from the sun, raises plants, which either we eat or what we eat eats. It gets transferred to our body, which we use energy to do the things that we do. And one of the big things for me was realizing how much energy our brain takes and how much what we focus on is really a expenditure for our day. Because we've been on a fitness journey so much to where we're getting our steps in, we're doing multiple walks, we're doing workouts, we're doing all these different things. But I've been trying to apply the same principles on what I think about and what I focus on. Because I have been such a habitual stressor in my life. I'm a ruminate on things. I get anxious on things, especially when it's upcoming, trying to figure out every way that can fall apart. And we already talked about how you can't predict the future, so why waste that energy on that? Mm-hmm. And thinking of it in that resource of, even if I'm just sitting on the couch, procrastinating and stressing about something, that's using up probably more energy than if I would just go actually do the thing. And there's a book I read, let me pull it up here. It just talks about how much energy your brain uses. So I'm going to quote it really quick because I thought it was fascinating. So quote, "Let's start with the ongoing cost of maintaining a brain that has enlarged to the extraordinary size of ours. It's a millstone around the neck, or rather above it. An organ, the human brain, accounts for about 2% of adult body mass, but saps 15% of the body's oxygen, 20% of its energy budget, and 50% of the body's primary fuel, glucose. Relative to its body size, the human brain is said to consume up to 10 times more energy than the brains of other land mammals." So,
wow.
You don't realize how much of what you get in from what you consume and what you actually have for energy reserves gets put into your head and keeping your body function, but most likely what you do to stay conscious and what you focus your efforts on. So that's been a big thing for me, is stop procrastinating, stop worrying, and just start doing the action. And then I save the energy so I can do better things like go for walks and spend time with my family and all those pieces.
That's cool. I love that. Yeah, you throw stats at me, I'm interested. So what you're saying, what you're saying is that not only are you what you eat, but you are also what you think.
100%.
Makes sense.
And then based on what you eat can also help or aid in what you think.
Sure.
So that's been another part of it too, where, we'll go out and eat pizza and have a beer and do all these things, or Halloween was just recently and you eat a bunch of junk food and you feel like garbage. Mm-hmm. That's because you're not getting good enough energy in. Again, everything's energy in, energy out. And so if you can try to model your days and routines and your intakes and everything around energy efficiency, utilizing the most of it, it's a neat and easy way to start performing at a better level.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool, because I think we've had a conversation in the past with some individuals, and I've seen this advice elsewhere. Is occasionally you'll run into an individual, and to be honest, I think most of us have been there at one time, where we're unhealthy, we're unhappy, we don't like our job, but we're just a little depressed. Maybe we don't have great personal relationships, really just feeling low. and people are like, where do I start? And I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert in any of this, but one advice I've seen and one advice I took myself that worked was, you hate your job, go work out. You sad because you can't get a date, go work out. You can't find the energy to get up and do your passions and your hobbies anymore, go work out. And it's not about being ripped. It's not, once again, I love David Goggins. I would love to meet him, but you don't have to be him. All I'm saying is the connection with moving your body, taking care of your body and your mind, like you just said, and the improvement in other aspects of your life, the correlation is real and it's right there. Go out for a walk if you're stressed. If you want to find the energy to do something, go work out, because that there's a direct connection with moving your body and being productive physically with being productive in everything else in your life. And I've
Yeah,
found that personally true.
100%. And again, if your focus is on improving your body, you're going to eat less junk because you're not going to want to counteract the work that you've done. But when you eat better and your body becomes more efficient, you get more energy, which increases your mood and your output and all these different
Exactly.
factors. And so just as it can improve, it can spiral if you go the opposite direction. So again, finding that right balance, and I would say balance is the right word too, because I personally have been over obsessed with things like weight loss or exercise, and it's a good stress reliever. It's a good way to take your mind off things, but you can quickly use it as a crutch instead
Sure.
of dealing with the things that matter. And that's just been really a big thing for me again over this last year of trying to find that balance where if there's something that's I need to do but I don't want to do it, it's way less intensive for me. And when I think about it, it's like energy expenditure units. It's I just waste energy by procrastinating it, and so
Yeah.
I just go do it, and then that frees me up to go do other things that are more productive or more fulfilling.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah. I don't know how fulfilling it is to lay on the couch watching the same show you've seen 4 times and ruminating over something that has yet to come. What a waste of energy. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, just end up doom scrolling.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so my third one is kind of a two-parter, just like my last one, because I suck at following rules. Okay, so specifically things I've garnered from this last year of this podcast. We've all heard it before, but networking is absolutely the key to success. In your career, in a podcast, in a side venture, a new entrepreneurship hustle, whatever it is, networking is so freaking essential. And it's not and the two part to this comes with it's not just about knowing the right person who can introduce you to your highest sale or someone who can get you your next job opportunity or anything like that. That's completely valid. Don't get me wrong. And I think post-COVID massive layoffs have taught a lot of people the value of networking, and utilizing the friends you've made in the past to help you get to your next venture. But on the flip side of that, what I'm talking about networking is also, and we've discussed this one-on-one, not being scared to ask people for things or knowledge. That was coming into this podcast when we decided we were going to do interviews. I was kind of internally terrified at the concept, not about interviews in itself. That seems simple in my head, but getting the interview,
Asking for the interview.
asking. And that extends to not only asking for the interview. Pretty much everyone we've asked for an interview has in some way, shape, or form hooked us up. But also just asking for knowledge. We've met some really impressive, amazing people on this podcast over the last year. And not once did I ever get the impression that they were withholding like secrets to their, success. Never once. If we asked the question, they'd answer it because most people want to see other people succeed too. And I think we have this idea in our head that that's not true. And I think it stalls a lot of people from success.
Yeah, and people work with people they like, and that goes through every level of humanity. It just depends on the level of game that you're playing, but at the end of the day, you have a circle of people you know and you trust, and you go to them consistently every time that you need to get something done. And so if you are just isolated, then it's an uphill battle. And we've talked about the job market, and it's something that, you know, you've had experience with. It's something I deal with day to day. It is so unbelievably hard to get someone a job just from a resume, just in the unknown. If you put in, you check the boxes, it's such an uphill, difficult, slow, almost like inhumane way of doing it because you're going through all these computer systems that are analyzing you and you just feel like a number because in so many ways you are.
Sure.
But by having a community and actually networking and being a part of it and contributing, people get to know you, they get to know what your capabilities are, they get to know how reliable, and they will open doors for you. And so many times you see people like it's just almost serendipitous on how these things kind of come together, where you know somebody and they have some need that aligns with what your skill set is, and then you guys can come together, whether it's to form a new company or to come to board their company, or they have a friend that's looking for help and you can help them out and you can do some consulting work. There's all these different things that just come together that you never could anticipate by just being with people and enjoying your time and providing a lot of value for them.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good definition, Tanner, because I think a lot of people look at the networking is key kind of mantra and assume it's kind of playing a game. Like, oh, I'm rubbing elbows with this, and making some deals over here. And there could be a game to networking, but I also think that there's extreme value in genuine networking, making friends, doing exactly what you said. Past bosses I've had, I still talk to today, have wonderful relationships. We interviewed one here on the podcast, one of my ex-bosses, and I was able to do all of that and be able to utilize them and help me in the future because they liked me. They knew I provided good work. They knew that I was an upstanding person and I wasn't just going to take their recommendation or use their clout and then give them a bad name. It's not it can be a game networking, but I think attacking it from genuine connection, the door's open for you because people like you and they know what the value you provide.
Yeah, well, and people hate being sold to. And so many times these network events just devolve into just people basically giving the equivalent of in-person voicemails or cold emails.
Yeah.
And there's some agenda and they want to get something from you and you do things, and that's completely the wrong thing when it comes to networking. Mm-hmm. It is, what can I do for you, or what value or maybe there just is no agenda and it's like, hey, I'm just looking for genuine connection. I'm looking for peers. Well, I'm looking for someone to grow together. I'm looking for someone to play pickleball with, or different things. And that's what's actually been so wonderful about the podcast is I have met people at, corporate events that if I would just go up to them as a salesperson, they wouldn't give me 2 seconds of the day. But when I can start talking to them about what I'm interested and I'm excited about, which most recently was like huge discussions around AI and all this, I'm talking to high level people on a peer level. And some of them are like, oh, I'd love to come on your podcast and just share that. And you can build all sorts of relationships from that. There's no agenda. Like I'm not trying to sell to you, because honestly, it's not about selling to you. But once you get to know me, and you have a need and you know I can help you, you'll come to me. And that's the way it works. And if you don't, that's okay too. Because again, it's not about just the what can I sap from every situation, but again, what can I provide to the situation? And we get so much more fulfillment by giving than taking. And there's so many studies on that. And so I won't bring that up, but you can dive into your own research about how giving is so much more rewarding and fulfilling than receiving. So my final one, I think you'll like this one. So are you familiar with the concept of FU money?
Sure. Having enough money where you can do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about, the concerns of quitting your job because you can afford it.
Yeah, you can afford pretty much any situation. So I'm a big fan of Chris Williamson. He has the Modern Wisdom podcast, and he came up with the concept of FU family. So the same kind of concept around, you have FU money or FU freedom. The more important one is actually the FU family. So you have a support network of people, whether that's a spouse, children, parents, siblings, cousins, all these things are so strong and tight that whatever the circumstance that comes to you, you can overcome it. And there's many times where the weight is so heavy that you can't bear it alone. And that's where they come in and they really support you. They help supplement wherever you're deficient. And so that's been a huge thing for me over the last few months, is thinking about not how can I progress my career, or how can I earn more money, or how can I get more notoriety, but is how can I strengthen my family. And by having that strong foundation, and I used to think of it, and we've even talked previously about the hierarchy of values. I used to think about it as the individual first, your mind, body, and spirit being the core foundation. But I'm starting to remap that a little bit and thinking maybe the foundation is actually your family. Because it's true that you have to be put together so you can support them. You're not adding some unnecessary weight or burden to them, and you can provide for them and all those pieces. But without them, you're just kind of alone in the wilderness, and you're not nearly as resilient or strong as you potentially could be. So what's your thoughts there?
I freaking love that concept. I have never heard about an FU family. And I've heard about FU money, but I was always like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to become a millionaire anytime soon. So I'm just going to push that book or whatever to the side. But FU family, there's something there to that. And having that support in the good times and the bad is extremely valuable. It's something both you and I don't take for granted. And those have been some fun conversations we've had is on the side of is about our family, our children, our wives, our friends group. We talk about on this podcast all the time. Our friends group, they're an interesting group of characters, but we love them. And you're right. That is more substantial and valuable to my future, mental health success than I can, than me just saying, I don't need to do that task you asked me to because I have money. I love that concept so much. I'm going to have to think more on that.
Yeah. And I was just typing to make sure I got everything right. There's the book, Walden Pond by Henry David Thoreau. And there was like this sense of individualism that's always been propagated, or the concept of self-reliance, which was Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, all these different pieces. And when I was younger, I really kind of took that part to heart. Like I don't need a lot of people. I can do stuff myself. I'm an individual person. And there's just been a huge shift over the last year around realizing how wrong that is. And I did a little bit of digging and reading like I always do on different parts, and come to find out like Thoreau and Emerson were actually, like, while yes, Thoreau had a cabin in the woods, it was on a main track that was a very popular thing for people to go visit all the time, to go to the pond. And so he would talk to people constantly, and he was constantly going into town. It wasn't just him as some hermit of being all alone. Actually, he was very reliant on his community and all these different aspects. And so there's these narratives that we get about like being Sigma, you're the lone wolf, you're these all things. And hustle culture and all these places have that, like, you got to prop yourself up, look out for yourself first. Or even in our like education system, it's all about like, you got to build your career and all these different things before you can go do all the other pieces. And it's completely the reverse. It's you need to be building your up, first relationship, with your immediate family. And then as you go to start your own family, make sure that that's as strong as possible, because by having that strong foundation, that's what's going to lift you up much, much higher than you trying to go that path by yourself. Because one setback, one health issue, one run into financial issues can throw you all the way back to the bottom, compared to having that safety net through your support system of your family that can keep you moving forward.
No, completely. And, name any successful person in the world. Your Bezos, your Musks, your whatever. If you admire billionaires, pick any random billionaire. Do you think they did it by being a lone wolf? Hell no. Take any successful music star, Taylor Swift. Do you think she did it because she's just an amazing lone wolf? Absolutely not. And there are stories that kind of build up this mythos about that lone wolf. But pardon my language, most of them are bullshit. And there is something personally empowering about the lone wolf mythos, and I don't need to rely on anyone. But you said it. You could achieve success that way. You absolutely could. But something will happen someday, and you don't have that foundation, that family, the mentors, anything like, you don't have that foundation to maintain that position. And generally, success is not done in a closet by yourself.
No, and if you think back to like the Bezoses and the Bill Gates, I mean, it wasn't until the very end after they had all their success, and it seems like they're winding down in all of these stuff, that's when their marriages started to fall apart. But when they were in the uprise, they actually had a strong, supportive partner in all those things, and that's why Jeff Bezos' wife got half his money or some obscene amount of his money, and Melinda Gates is also very, very wealthy and very powerful and very influential because they went through it together. And it seems, again, once that erodes, that's when a lot of stuff starts to decay. And so having it very strong. And the other piece of this that I'm new to is, again, having kids. And there's something just incredible about there's a couple parts to it. One is you have someone fully dependent on you, so you can't let them down. So you don't take as much risk at betting, everything on black, because if you do lose everything, it'll directly affect those. So you're more calculated and more precise, and you play a longer game, which tends to have more results in the long term. But also you have someone who truly looks up to you and kind of admires you, and that gives you that boost of confidence that you really need. Like, I come upstairs and the pure excitement when he sees me and all that's a huge motivator that I never had before in my life. And it's
the boosted confidence and the kick in the butt to make sure that the person they're admiring is worth admiring, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I've been in dad mode for 17 years, and I can unequivocally say that being a father has directed my career, has directed my life views, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And exactly as you said, is kids look up to their parents, and if you have kids, make sure that they're looking up to something you would want them to look up to.
Exactly. So I think that was our 6 for the year. We'll have to come up with more on the second year.
Yes, it's been a wonderful journey. Everyone who listens, I greatly appreciate you. Tanner, I greatly appreciate you. I cannot safely say if I had started this podcast myself, I probably would not be here 1 year later still doing this. And we've talked about having the pressure's the wrong word, but having accountability, having someone to hold you accountable. There have been Tuesday nights where it's getting close to recording time, and I'm like, I don't want to, and then I'm like, but Tanner would be mad at me. So I appreciate
we would have like 10 episodes maybe within a year if we were each doing it solo, because 100%. You were just slow. So
yeah,
compounding.
And
it's compounding.
Compounding, yes. And we're continuing. 1 year in, I have zero intention to stop. In fact, we have some baller interviews coming up in November. So November is going to be a good month for us. I strongly encourage listeners to tune in, because there's going to be some pretty interesting characters coming in with some pretty fascinating perspectives and histories.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk with everybody and get to share those conversations. It's going to be incredible. So yeah. So thank you everybody who's listened over the past year, and thank you for everyone who's just discovering us. We hope to keep improving and keep growing. All right. Well, we'll see everybody next week. Bye.